Hi, guys. Welcome back to the new episode of our podcast from Listec. And it's a pleasure to say that with us today is Mr. Ruben Sardaryan, if I'm pronouncing his name rightly. He is the CEO and the founder of Infocratic. I know locally, he's a local guy, like Toronto guy. I know he has been doing phenomenal work within the community locally, but I'll hand over to Mr. Ruben to introduce himself and walk us through his profile and some achievements and what he has been doing, and then we can move to the next round. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having me, Arif. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. To do a brief introduction, I'm basically a data strategist with about 25 years of experience in technology and data.
Okay.
I started career as a software engineer early in my university days. I've worked for about 15 years for Silicon Valley companies building large-scale software. And then I moved to Canada at around 2008 and joined Questrade, then a small brokerage. I initially helped them build their trading platform, and then I went on leading their data and analytics practice. So I've been basically leading, I made my career mainly at Questrade, where I led data and analytics for over a decade.
Okay.
And thus, at Questrade, I developed this so-called data-centric thinking.
Right.
When you juggle a lot of, so I built and bought a ton of technology, and you kind of see how information lives its own life.
Okay.
Through the ever-shifting landscape of technology. So technology comes and goes, but data and information, they stay. And you sort of start noticing the patterns, really information economics patterns that do good to the enterprise or they do bad, right? So, and I largely started looking at any sort of technology as container for data and information. So the primary role for me now plays, so sort of keeping that the economics of information and data healthy and growing in an enterprise. So I'm a big data management guy. I'm a big proponent of the data-centric approach, where you put data and information at the core of the enterprise, and you sort of base your business on that. I'm actually releasing an online course now called Data-Centric Executive that talks in depth about that. So a little plug, you can go to datacentricexecutive.com and sign up to that course. So when COVID started, I decided to go and start my own consulting practice.
Okay.
Initially, I was doing executive advice and just advising all sorts of leaders on data strategy, technology strategy, and how to take their firms to the next level. And then a few of my clients, they asked me to help with implementation, delivery, and so Infocratic is now growing as an agency pretty much. So we have about 30 contractors.
Wow.
And we're helping firms end to end. Again, typically we come in on the strategy front, but some of our newer clients, they just come for us for a specific implementation. So we help with data engineering, we help with modeling, creating all sorts of like data pipelines, data models. We help with machine learning, analytics, BI, so all of that stuff, and data management as well. So we're an end-to-end data and analytics consultancy, and that's Infocratic. I'm also a CTO and co-founder of a knowledge graph company called Semantium. It's an early-stage startup, and it preaches an innovative modeling way of an innovative approach to knowledge graphs, which we call language-first knowledge graphs. And it's based on the premise that everything starts from the language, starts from how you use language in the enterprise. And we sort of help to create a semantic graph on top of all sorts of other information you have in the organization. So that's the background.
Wow, a big one. It was really a big one. Okay, just a small question. Like, people know the terms like data management, data engineering, data governance, but this data centricity, what does specifically this data centricity in a very 10,000 feet, what does it mean? and what is the value it gives us to the organizations?
Yeah, so data centricity is my formal definition of it is when an organization A builds a single data model. So and B, they prioritize managing their information and data assets over managing technology and org structures.
Okay. And
Okay.
how does this different from enterprise data model or enterprise data warehouse? Because generally, I think that is also the same concept as compared to building a data warehouse with data mart. So that is like
Not really, not really, because if you look at an average organization, actually there was a research recently, I think, done by one of the platforms. Let me remember which. Anyway, so there was a research. I have more details in my course on that, but they did a research, and an average organization uses over 1,000 different applications. So this is on average. And typically when we come in, even into a small organization, 100, 200 people, we see dozens and dozens of applications and systems, right? So, and the problem with that is that each application, each system, it comes with its own data model, meaning its own view of the world, right? So that's the view of the world of this particular application, be it a CRM, be it some sort of an HR system or financial system, et cetera, right? So, then you're trying to cram your business operating model into this disparate systems, right? So data warehousing, yes, it's an attempt to create, so you sort of can use very expensive data warehousing methodologies that can help you to normalize between the data. But then you're spending an arm and a leg on that data warehouse, and you're spending an arm and a leg on integration.
Wow.
So between 40 to 70% is predicted. There's Dave McComb's book, Data-Centric Revolution. I highly recommend it. He predicts, he actually estimates that 40 to 70% of modern IT budget is just waste, is basically creating copies of data, creating integrations. So moving data from one source to another, remodeling it, transforming it. So it's a lot of unnecessary movement of data. And I've seen it pretty much in most firms. I only know like a handful of truly data-centric firms. I know there are more, but I know only a few firms who are truly data-centric, like they're architected, they're organized that way. Yeah, so data warehousing is typically it just creates another model, and then companies struggle to keep that model in sync with everything else that's happening, right? So your source changes, let's say your application updates to a new version, or your API changes, some sort of like third-party API changes, and then you have to adjust your model in the warehouse to accomplish that. So that's painful and expensive.
Got it. Okay. And your approach, like data centricity, so there is another aspect of like data lake, data warehouse to data lake, and then from data lake to data lake houses, right? So ideally, is it very much similar to the data lake house because they are
so these are all just different types of data stores, right? So the data lake approach is that you just pour data in, you don't model it upfront.
Yeah.
Right. So sort of ingest anything that comes your way. And data warehouse approach is that you create a model and then you conform data to that model as you ingest it.
So what is the approach of data centry over here? Is it more inclined towards data warehouse? Is it more inclined towards data lakehouse, or is it something totally different phenomena?
It's inclined to, well, you need to try to avoid data lakes and data warehouses whenever possible. Whenever possible.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, architecturally you can create copies of data. Obviously, there's the kind of the general computing trade-off, right? That sometimes you need copies of data just for performance or all sorts of like caches, right? This laptop that I'm using, besides the memory, it has like 4 levels of cache in its CPU, which is all copies of data, right? So
Right.
you can have this sort of trade-offs, but semantically, you need to manage this data in a holistic manner.
Okay.
You shouldn't have, for instance, if you have if you have modeled, say, your most critical data about your customer in a certain way, right? So you need that you know that for really serving your customers well, you need to know these things about them, right? And they need to be modeled in a certain way.
I see.
Right, so making sure that all your systems and processes and people, they all understand that how this, like, what this data means.
Right.
That's the most important thing,
That's the most
right? So that yeah, your different departments, your different systems, applications, they don't have a way of understanding it, right? So if you have a way to control the modeling, to control how things are implemented, you conform it to the model that you build. If no, you try to do sort of things afterwards. But the main thing is that you put the information about the customer first, right? So so imagine this absurd situation. Let's say, for instance, imagine a wallet, right? And imagine your wallet telling you how you spend your money. Right? So you can only go to certain stores and you can only spend this much, right? So imagine your wallet dictating you like how much you can have and how you can spend it.
Okay.
Right, but this is the absurd situation happening in most companies, the wallet being the technology and the money being the data. So companies, they choose technology that they buy or they build, and then they bind themselves by the confines of this technology in terms of what they can do, right? So if you go the other way, if you start with information modeling first, and you first decide, okay, what type of information benefits my business, what the life cycles of information should look like, what do I need to capture, how I need to manage it, right? So if you have, so some strong, some organizations that have a strong data management function, they come close, but they do it at an enormous cost, right? So if we look at, there's all sorts of data management disciplines, right? Metadata management, master data management. So all of these disciplines, they help, but they are a bit old school and imperfect when it comes to managing these life cycles of data.
Okay. So what might be the right use cases? So like say, what I witness is that customer journey is one of the major issue from from data warehousing or maybe data lakes as well, because end-to-end customer journey depends upon like maybe CRM to payments to like products, and generally the solutions are not there. Similarly, use cases like KYC, know your customer, is also very challenging, right? And then it comes to financial crimes or AML. Then again, the financial institutions are facing some issues. And then, of course, the regulatory requirements are there. So are these particular, like, or these specific use cases data-centric is able to replicate? Or
all of them. So data-centric approach means that you're putting your information model first.
okay.
That's it, right? So it's a certain culture of treating data as an asset and giving it a priority. Let's say, so for instance, if your financial department decides that, hey, I'm going to go and purchase this ERP, or I'm going to go and purchase this SaaS system that is going to model things its own way, right? And you have a way of telling them no, because this kind of it takes our it breaks the information picture for the company, right? So the whatever technology you bring in, whether you buy it or you build it, information modeling comes first, and that's that. So the absolutely all use cases will benefit from data-centric approach. And actually, if you look at data-centric companies, they can do things their competition can only dream of. So they move lightning fast. They have they're really agile. They can do lots of experiments, do them cheaply, quickly. they sort of can transform their business very quickly. So it's a level of architecture that they realize that every business is an information business, and information in those companies is a first-class citizen. It's not an afterthought, right? In most companies, it's an afterthought. Companies think in terms of apps or technologies, data warehouse, ERP, CRM, this application, that application, this SaaS system, right? API. But the information underneath, it's often an afterthought. Okay, data people will figure out. They'll deal with the quality, they'll deal with the mapping, right? When you put information first, then all of a sudden you find out that technology decisions get streamlined, and process decision, people decisions, they get streamlined, because you're treating information as a first-class citizen. You treat, I live in a digital age. This is a digital economy. Digital runs on data and information. I need to be really, really good at that.
Okay.
Right. So you build dedicated data teams. You build dedicated modeling teams, for instance, and you really start treating information as a first-class citizen in an organization, not as an afterthought. Yeah.
So I think we already touched base, but just to be very specific about, I think what you are suggesting is that organizations should opt for knowledge first rather than the technology first, right? So what are the pros and cons of going technology first versus like, what are some disadvantages? Because that is a general practice being followed, maybe like a lot of FSIs and telcos are taking the technological perspective first rather than the knowledge. So what do you think are the major gaps over there, or what are the limitations?
Yeah, and if you want, you can ask me about the reasons why the word technology stands. I can tell you like a whole bunch of reasons why companies end up where they are. But the biggest thing is creating a lot of waste. So it's inefficient, right? So think your right hand doesn't know what your left hand is doing,
right?
Or imagine if we look at the business as a very complex system, a very complex computer, if you will, and pretty much all digital businesses are very complex computers that are constantly changing with lots of moving parts. So a data-centric business is a very elegant computer that is well built, well designed, with no redundant parts, no conflicting parts. And technology-centric business is a very badly designed system. So a computer that has a lot of redundant parts, a lot of parts that are even conflicting with each other and competing against each other, right? So first and foremost is efficiency, is just waste.
Got it.
So
okay, sounds good. So we touched base about the technology and something. We also touched base about the use cases as well. So what are some different trends and different, AIs or LLMs related to it?
Trends in AI, LLMs. I just recently...
And if you can elaborate for the audience as well, because most of the time there might be some people who might not be knowing those terms. So if you can just touch base. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, so LLMs are large language models. These are essentially AI models, so neural net models, along with some other scaffolding that are trained on very large amount of data.
Okay.
And they are fairly kind of complicated and large neural nets. And it turns out such neural nets can very efficiently mimic human intelligence. So they're they have good sense of reason, they have good sense of context. So they're kind of approaching on human intelligence. I don't see it's not like a general artificial intelligence yet, but it's something that comes pretty darn close, at least like in some use cases. Right? I actually done a few webinars on large language models recently, and there's also a library called LangChain that allows you to create applications with large language models. So allows you, for instance, to chain an output from one language model to as an input to another, and sort of create smart agents that can use other tools. So that library can allow large language models to call other tools like your data sources, databases, knowledge graphs, APIs. so give information outside of the original training set to the language model to work with, and it's a very powerful library. So I haven't been this much excited about technology for a while. Because like when you sort of go to all these like technology symposiums and data symposiums, you kind of see where the market is going, and it's been pretty linear. But this last few months, I think LLMs had a very big breakthrough, and they're going to change every industry, because all of a sudden we have access to a huge amount of cognitive power.
Right.
So a lot of cognitive work, a lot of primitive cognitive work, and even kind of a lot of creative cognitive work, it's going to be automated.
So just a small question is that since this sports is very much sports and neural networks, and also the prediction as well, and also the cognition models as well, as you were saying. So how does that impact, let's say if we are a financial institution or a telecom, right? And we are implementing this, and of course these changes are coming. How easy is it from a governance side or data governance side to replicate this in your processes and systems? That is a fun question. And secondly, how this AI like ChatGPT will impact this thing. So these are my last two questions before we.
Yeah, so I mean, ease of implementation depends on really what you want to do. You can concoct something very useful in a few hours, or you can build something bigger and more impactful. But technology overall is commoditizing, and even large language models have become sort of a commodity. So it really depends. With financial institutions, they would very likely have to host their own instances of large language models, or go with a reputable provider, because they don't want to trust their data, because data is going out to these agents, to the large language models when you're interacting with it. So that would be one of the things to look out for. Yeah, so your second part of the question was what the impact will be.
Yeah, the ChatGPT just introduced. So ChatGPT, there's a lot of impact on like current systems and models, your cognitive models, your neural networks. So is it being impacted? Will it impact, or will it leverage, or will it be a showstopper, or what do you think from your perspective?
All of those things. depends on which area you're in, right? So some people will get enormous benefits, and they will see a lot of they will essentially take their work to the next level.
Right.
They'll use all sorts of assistance from this AI to be more precise, more productive, more creative. Depends, right? And there are people for sure who will get their jobs swept away by this thing. Yeah, so like for instance, Infocratic, we already had this thing where we actually implemented a research robot that replaced the whole research team.
I see. Okay.
Right. So and it's basically it's or like a billing team. So people were doing billing manually, and we automated that billing using large language models. And so there's no going around there. It's a whole new.
LLMs, is it very much close to RPAs as well?
Sorry, close to what?
RPA, robotic process automation.
It's sort of the next level, right? So LLMs, they work with text. At least the current ones. There are going to be more multimodal ones working with images and video, but currently it's text, and anything that has to do with processing text, it will largely benefit from LLMs.
What is your last question is that what is your advice for our persons who have just started their journey, or they are in the middle career? So what will be your recommendations about the future, or what are the emerging trends? So that will be my last question.
My best advice to people anywhere in their career, really, because careers are changing so fast. Doesn't matter if you're in the beginning or in the middle. say, a lifelong learner. So assume that you're going to be learning every single day of your life, embrace it, and know that there's a ton of stuff coming, always that deep, and be versatile, right? So there's a very good book about generalists. Gosh, what was the name? So let me kind of advise a specific book that talks about like generalists versus specialists. But I very much advise people to be generalists and versatilists, as opposed to being a specialist in a single, especially a specialist. The neo-generalist, the book is called.
Okay.
By Kenneth Mickelson. So the worst thing that you can do is choose a technology and stick with just that technology, because it's going to change very, very quickly. So even if you're in a technology field and you're looking at, let's say, a platform, let's say you're a very good Power BI specialist, go out and see what's out there. Like, don't just, I've seen multiple generations of analytics platforms and analytics tools change, right? So there have been a few before Power BI even came out, and then Power BI killed lots of them. And now there are a few candidates that can kill Power BI eventually. In a couple of years. I see very interesting startups, right? I get some previews of like analytics technology that is kind of next level. But at least the user experience is totally different.
Absolutely.
Right?
Your business is changing, your landscape is changing, your modeling is changing. So of course, technology has to grow and
kind of grow your multidimensional knowledge, but don't get attached to a single tool or a single technology.
Very nicely said. Last question is that what have been your major successes from your organization perspective, your consultancy perspective? You said that you guys have 30 contractors, so that's a good business you're doing. So anything you have to talk about, like last 2 minutes, about your products or services, so that everyone is aware of that?
People can go to infocratic.io, or they can follow us on LinkedIn, or just reach out to me via multiple channels, website, LinkedIn, email. We're an end-to-end shop. So most people are senior. We do have some intermediate folks, but most people are fairly senior, and we have a few director, chief data officer level folks who are also very, very senior and very experienced in what they're doing. We just love helping customers solving kind of challenges, and like taking things to the next level.
So guys, if you want to the next level, get help from Ruben and his organization, right? They are there for you. Absolutely. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that whatever we discuss will have some good takeaways for our audience. And if anyone wants to reach out to Ruben, he can reach out to directly. Either you can reach out to me, I can be your postmaster. But generally, it was a pleasure talking to you, sir. I learned a lot from you, and hope the audience have learned from you something from you. Thank you very much. And
thanks very much for having me, Arif. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so